as Eugene said, at New Leaders, we've had the privilege to spend the last 4 years working in districts in Gauteng. And it's been a full-on immersion where we are in the district. We've got a person full-time in there. They've got an office. They sit in the executive team of the district. So we've been able over the last 4 years to get a really good sense of what it's like to partner with government. And we've learnt a lot. And tonight, I think Eugene's going to put a package together of what all the organizations do that presents at this conference. So I'm not going to talk about what we do. I want to talk a little bit about what we've learnt, in particular around how to partner with government around a collaborative model. And I want to start off by looking at a couple of key success factors that we've seen as game changers in how we've worked. And the first one is this piece around leadership buy-in. We've experienced working in districts where we haven't had it, and we've experienced working in districts where we have. And it's a game changer where, so at a provincial and district level, we've been able to get the buy-in, and it's made a considerable difference, where you've got doors opening, access to officials, and more importantly, leaders that are driving a process because they believe in it. Doesn't necessarily mean they themselves are doing it, but they've bought into it, and that's been a fundamental change for us. The other game changer for us has been this piece around having someone full-time in the system, day in, day out. One of the district officials said to me the other day, he said, we've got nowhere, we can run, but we can't hide. If I've got a problem, I speak to my immerse coach, and they come with me to the school. They help me prepare, they help me during the session with the school principal or with the group of teachers, and they help me reflect afterwards. And I think it's the sustained long-term relationship piece as well as the time. So that we found has built up a huge amount of trust amongst officials that's now starting to translate into real results. And we're 18 months in. And we've had this sort of approach around ready, steady, go. And it seems like the ready piece has taken 12 to 18 months. And now we're starting to see district officials getting steady and where they're feeling like they're owning these tools, they're owning a different approach to how they engage with schools. And the dialogue is changing. The conversation between the district official and the school principal and within the district is changing. And it's moving into a much, much more supportive one. So, a couple of key learnings, and for me, this one is a challenge to all of us working in the sector, because we've got fantastic programs and we've got fantastic ideas, but we often don't believe that government can change, and we feel like we're always running up against a brick wall. And our experience has been that over time, they can and they are, and it's not easy, but it's happening. So I think that's a really important piece for all of us to take into the work that we're doing in the system. Because for me, the system sits with the problem. We're all there to help them. But the system effectively, and when I say system, I'm talking about government. And we're there to support them. The other key learning is this one around data. And I think that's something that in the NGO space, we all understand. It's how we speak to our funders. But I don't know how good we are at taking data and sharing it with the system, with the districts. I don't know how good we are in our programs at communicating our success with the system. I think that there's a parallel process that happens that isn't effective and isn't an enabler for the system. And it speaks to this next point for me, which is that government has good people. And that's why I'm in this work. I think it was in the first 6 months of doing this work, and I was sitting in a workshop with a bunch of district officials, and I suddenly realized that there was commitment, there was passion, and there was deep skill. And I'm not saying that's true for every district in every province, but from what I understand from many of the colleagues that I've spoken to working in other provinces, it does exist. So all the work that we do in our spaces as NGOs, as individuals, I think is noble, and it's fantastic. But there are people in the system that are trying to do the same thing and that desperately need support. And that's a picture of one of them, who's a highly successful curriculum leader in Gauteng. And this is a little bit of, this next piece for me is something that we've discovered around work that we've been doing around organizational and relationship systems coaching, where we've been able to look at the people that we're working with in government and see very clearly defined groups of people in terms of the change that we've been trying to create. And the first group is this group of leapers, and they're the ones that's high risk, very comfortable with change, early adopters. They jump in quickly. And we're not suggesting that we're pushing district officials off cliffs or anything, but what we're finding is that they're in the system. And those are the ones that create momentum. They're the ones that are the change agents that really speed up the process of how a system can shift gears into change. They're not, what we find is they're not always the leaders. They're often the people that are in the system, working in a specific cluster of schools, that have heard about what we're doing, like it, jump on board, get the coaching, get the support, and start driving change. But they're not necessarily the leaders. On the other side, you've got what we call tradition holders. And again, they're not all old people, but symbolic of the profile of what this group of people do is that they hold the current reality of the system and the history. And they hold what we see as the how things work around here conversation. You need to remember this is how things have been. And we've seen change. We've seen change come and go. And often our leaders sit in this place of having to be accountable and having to hold the system in its current reality. And the tradition holders have a huge amount of value to change. And I think it's often forgotten. And that's this wisdom of how things have been historically and what we can learn from them. Because as change agents in education, we're driving this place. We want everyone to be leapers. We want them to move into driving change and changing the conversation and changing the way education is for our learners and our teachers. But we forget that these tradition holders, as difficult as they can be, and as stuck as they sometimes seem, they actually hold some wisdom. So what we're finding in moving these guys forward into a place that's closer to the leapers is around acknowledging their wisdom. And we've seen it beautifully where in Gauteng we're going through a big change process, and there's a huge amount of resistance. And where we're acknowledging the group that hold this traditional role and saying, speak your wisdom, let's hear what you've got to say, including them in the change conversation, as opposed to saying, you guys are stuck, we need to be working with the guys that are moving forward. And then in the middle is our bridge builders. And our bridge builders are a continuum between the tradition holders and the leapers. And what we're finding with the bridge builders is that they're critical to relaying information between these two groups. Because if we only had the two groups, we would have a massive chasm in between of nothing happening. So you'd have the guys driving change and then the ones saying, no, we don't want to do it. And these bridge builders, what we're finding are really being able to speak to the leapers and say, but hang on guys, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Give us evidence. And the guys on the continuum that are closer to the leapers are able to relay the success stories back to the other bridge builders and into the tradition holders. And that is therefore creating confidence in the system that's allowing some of the tradition holders to slowly start moving across. The other thing that I want to share around the leapers is that I think a lot of them get burnt out. And we're finding that guys that are early adopters, they take up the lead, they jump in, and they don't get recognized, and their value doesn't get utilized in the change process. and so they stop doing it. They give up. And I think if you're working with government and you've got someone in there that's driving a process for you and they're running up against brick walls, it's about how do you manage them and how do you help them to start building capacity in this middle ground so that they can start bringing the guys that are potentially the gatekeeper to giving you more opportunity and to driving the process through the system. Because I know that for a lot of NGOs, working with government is something you want. But it's hard work. And a lot of us give up. And a lot of us just feel, well, let's go to the easiest unit of change, which is the school or the individual. And I think that what I'm trying to share with you is that there's value in spending time with government and trying to get them to work with you. And it takes time and it takes relationship building. So those are just a couple ideas around what we've seen working across the different types of profiles in government. And then my last point is this piece around partnerships and how do we create systemic change in the system? Because we're all doing work. We're all trying hard. Governments are carrying the main piece of the can. How do we create the partnership that we can get what Eugene and Emasa are driving at on this conference around cradle to career? Because essentially there are 86 districts in South Africa and approximately 112 teacher centers. And they hold a responsibility to support our teachers and our learners. And let me give you an example. In 2 districts in Gauteng, Bridge and Colleen's here recently did some research around donor mapping. And in those 450 schools, there's more than 150 active donor initiatives that are being driven in those schools. And we've had some conversations with the district, but the district officials know very little about those 150 activities, those initiatives. They've heard about them and they've kind of given them their blessing, but they haven't necessarily engaged with them. And that is your cradle to career. The ECD programs, there's leaderships around SMT, there's maths and science happening that are really trying to support what those schools are doing, but they haven't linked in with the system, who are also doing a whole lot of things. And in Gauteng in particular, there's a range of really strong change processes that are being driven by the system, but the two aren't talking to each other. And one of the things we're trying to do with district officials is to get them to start embracing the conversation between the donor initiatives, the foundations, the NGOs that are working in the system to say, what are you guys doing? And how can we learn from it? How can we, as a group of foundation phase teachers, learn from what you're doing in the 5 schools? Because we work in another 150. And if you can help us through the amazing work that you're doing in those 5 schools, it can open up a whole lot of impacts for the learners and the teachers in the schools that we are talking to. So for us, this is a key piece around the work that we're doing with districts, but I also think it's a challenge for people working in the sector external to government to start thinking about how do we support government's initiatives in a systemic way as opposed to in our own little pockets, and really start engaging with the districts and the teacher centers in particular around what are you doing, how can we help work together. So, I mean, these are just some statistics. You know, if you think about the 2.89 billion that's been spent through corporate social investment, that doesn't even include the foundations and philanthropists that are putting money into the system. It's a big number, but it's nothing compared to the 200 billion that's been spent through our national budget. And we've got to get those 2 pieces working together, because this is David and Goliath stuff, where David is driving, you know, the NGOs are doing some amazing work, but aren't necessarily speaking to the system enough. So for what I'd like to end off with is a challenge to you in the work that you do and in how you present in this next day of this conference, and to say to you, the system is trying to shift, but you know, as I was suggesting, there's a lot of tradition holders sitting in positions of leadership that are stuck, and what can we do as service providers to the system to create a bigger impact? Are we speaking enough to the districts? Are we speaking enough to the teacher centres? Have we asked them what they're trying to do? Have we really tried to engage with them? Because I think that's a piece that's not happening enough. And we've had the privilege of being in the system to see it. I have calls all the time from organizations who are trying to work in the system and saying to us, well, you guys seem to have an amazing relationship with the districts. Can you help us with our maths program? Can you help us with our arts and drama program? Because it's difficult. And the reality is that it is possible, but it takes effort, and it takes a sense of a determination around seeing the value of government. Because as I said, they've got good people. And these people want to see change just as much as we do. So I think it's my challenge is around our perception as support to government. I think we need to really look at ourselves carefully and say, do we think that they can do it? How many conversations do you hear about people speaking about the bad news and linking it directly to government? And I think we need to change that conversation. I think we need to start seeing government as an enabler and seeing government as a partner, and really start seeing government, who's sitting with the bulk of the problem, as capable. I think we're too quick to write them off. We're too quick to see them as a problem. They're good people who want to see change just as much as we do. So that's really my challenge that I'm putting out to you over this weekend. And again, thank you, Eugene, for giving me the chance to speak. And thank you, Emasa. Enjoy the conference.
I became a circuit manager in 1997, and we introduced OBE, or Curriculum 2005, in 1997.